Hello and welcome to the Memory Card. Today, I figured that I would change things up a bit by talking about 6 Nintendo Switch eShop games that I've been really enjoying recently. Now, the first one up here is Immortal Redneck. What I really like about it is that this is a classic run and gun first-person shooter that I like, more like the style of Serious Sam, Painkiller Black Edition, and the 2016 Doom. This is the way that I tend to prefer first-person shooters. And it's a roguelite. It's got randomly generated pyramid dungeons that you're going through because you're playing as a redneck with a really bad southern accent who's was going on a little vacation in Egypt four-wheeling, but somehow got into a crash and then was mummified by these guys and now is, I guess, in this different mythological version of Egypt. Story doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't really need to because the focus is the gameplay. You're playing this roguelite, and it's in the randomly generated pyramid dungeons, like I said, which kind of reminds me of Ziggurat, which I also hope that gets put on the Switch because that game is great. But anyway, there is progression because during each of your runs, you earn money that lets you buy new upgrades and abilities and new playable characters or classes. There's 9 in total, I believe. And they add a lot of great variety to the game. I also really enjoy the colorful art style as well. It complements the fast-paced gameplay, which just makes it all feel very arcadey, which again is great for me. And also, to add even more variety and randomness, there's also these scrolls that you get during each of your runs, which can impact different things like how much damage enemies do, whether you'll regenerate more health or less, just more variety to add more spice to each individual run that you're going through. Next up is Skies of Fury DX, or Deluxe, whatever. I think that this was originally a game on phones, but on the Nintendo Switch, it's not very expensive and there's no microtransactions or anything like that, which is great. Then also you have actual physical control, so that means it actually plays well. And this is a World War I era arcade flight game. You're going to be doing a lot of dogfighting, which is a lot of fun because the controls work well. And there is also a decent variety of missions, from escort to just shoot down all the enemies, that kind of thing. And I enjoy the kind of cel-shaded graphics this game has going on. And there are loot boxes in this game, but they're all earned in-game, which is nice because I absolutely despise microtransactions. And in fact, the loot boxes last year kept me away from a lot of big AAA third-party games like Battlefront 2. But anyway. There's also some interesting wrinkles to this game because you can play as the British and German pilots, which it's definitely interesting being able to play both sides of the war there. And there's also a lot of customization options available to you throughout those loot boxes that you earn after beating each mission. A lot of different skins for planes and different little changes, like changes to your reticle that you have. So, some minor changes and some cooler ones here and there. Next is Saturday Morning RPG, and for full disclosure, I actually received review code for free for this game from the publisher Limited Run Games, and the publisher is actually pretty cool. If you don't know Limited Run Games, they have basically made a name for themselves by creating limited runs of physical copies of typically indie games, often for the PlayStation 4, the Vita. They're basically the only publisher making Vita games nowadays, it seems like. And also, they recently started doing that for the Nintendo Switch as well this year. And Saturday Morning RPG is one of those games. But they also published the digital version on the Nintendo eShop, and I'm not sure how many times they've done that for games. But anyway. I like the aesthetic in Saturday Morning RPG. It's 2D sprites on 3D environments, which kind of reminds me of Octopath Traveler, but personally I prefer the way Octopath looks, but that's just me. This game is chock full of 80s references and parodies, considering you're playing as a guy named Marty, and one of the first NPCs you run into is a guy called the Wizard who has a totally not NES Power Glove. And all the 80s references and parodies and that kind of stuff feels a lot more genuine to me than Ready Player One did, where that just felt like annoying pandering. But mechanically, I enjoy this game quite a bit because the battle system reminds me of early Paper Mario games and South Park: The Stick of Truth. And when it comes to that kind of JRPG combat, I really, really enjoy it. And also, a lot of the different attacks and special abilities you have are also more 80s references, like throwing floppy disks at people and that kind of thing. So, I do think that this game has more to it than just the references, but if you really enjoy those, then that'll just add more to this game. For me, it's more so that I like the mechanics of it, and also the story is some goofy fun. Although, I think the battles are definitely a bit harder than I thought they'd be. There's a lot of them where I just sort of barely scraped by. So there is definitely some challenge there for you. Now going back to another flying game, but this is kind of different because it's a amazing shmup called Skyforce Reloaded. This game has really great visuals that I really enjoy, and the way you upgrade and get stronger after every death reminded me a bit of Immortal Redneck, but this isn't a roguelite. It's all preset levels so you can learn them and get better at them, which is something that you pretty much always have to do with this genre of game. And those permanent upgrades that you can get, like having more guns and doing more damage and having more health and that kind of thing, adds some more depths to this that I'm not really used to in shmups, but is really cool. If you like this kind of genre at all, these arcade-style shooters, then I highly, highly recommend this game. And yet, another flying game, but this one is very different than the others. It's Inner Space. It has very trippy and zen vibes to this game. You play as a sentient ship called the Cartographer, trying to explore this place called the Inverse. Being able to fly through the air and dive into the water is very satisfying, and I do really enjoy the visuals. And you also have this NPC character who's kind of like your guide and the person that made you, called the Archaeologist. And that character is likable and this adds more charm to the game. But what I really enjoy about this game is the meshing of the solid flight controls and the general weird visuals. Like, there's not ever really an up. So for some people it could be a bit disorientating, but I really enjoyed my time with this game. And whenever I first saw trailers for this game, I was immediately interested in it and glad that I downloaded it. And last of the list here is Masters of Anima. The moment I heard about this game and any comparisons to Overlord, I immediately went and downloaded this game because I adore the Overlord games. More so the first one, but the second one is also really fun. Honestly, I think the Overlord games are some of the most underrated games from the 360 PS3 days. And the story in this game is fine. It's kind of a typical fantasy story in a way, like your fiance gets attacked, kidnapped, dismantled, whatever. It's usually a similar thing with these stories. But the gameplay is reminiscent of Overlord and Pikmin, because you control a small little army of constructs called Guardians. And you can end up controlling about 100 of these, and that's definitely very satisfying. And the battles can be tough. I've barely won quite a few of them early on in the game, but that might just be because I suck. But this is a very fun game, and also the art style is charming. It's not quite as memorable as something like Okami or Wind Waker, but it is still a pleasant art style, and I'll take that any day. So these are 6 Nintendo Switch eShop games that I've been really enjoying lately, and this definitely won't be the last of these videos because there are a lot of games on the Nintendo eShop. So, if you played any of these games, let me know what your thoughts on them were, and if any of these piqued your interest, let me know. But regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the memory card.